When CEO Nathan Bennett answered his private line that rainy October evening, a terrified child's voice pierced through the darkness. "Daddy, we're at the dump." 4 children lost in darkness, a desperate phone call to the wrong number, and a man who thought he'd left his past behind now forced to face the impossible truth waiting for him in the shadows. One decision would change everything, but some secrets are buried too deep to stay hidden forever. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and type Amen in the comments. A beautiful piece of good news may come your way very soon. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. The rain started as a whisper, barely more than mist against the gray October sky over Portland. Sarah Mitchell pressed her palm against the cold window of the small 2-bedroom apartment on Hawthorne Street, watching the droplets race down the glass. Behind her, the sounds of morning chaos filled the cramped space. 3 2-year-old boys tumbling over each other like puppies, and 7-year-old Lily trying to corral them into something resembling order. "Mason, no, that's not food." Lily's voice carried the exhausted patience of someone far older than her years. Sarah turned to see her daughter pulling a crayon from little Mason's mouth while his brothers, Tyler and Oliver, giggled at the spectacle. Sarah's heart clenched. 7 years old, and Lily already carried burdens no child should bear. The girl had her father's blonde hair and blue eyes, and sometimes when the light hit her just right, Sarah had to look away from the resemblance that still hurt after all these years. "I've got them, sweetheart," Sarah said, crossing the worn carpet to scoop up Mason. "You should be getting ready for school, not playing mommy." "But Mom, you're already late for your shift at the diner." Lily's small face creased with worry that belonged to someone 3 times her age. "And we're out of the boys' favorite cereal again." "We're out of everything again," Sarah thought, but didn't say. The double shift she'd worked yesterday had paid for exactly 3 days of groceries, and they were already on day 4. Her paycheck from the diner wouldn't come until Friday, and today was only Tuesday. "We'll manage," Sarah said, forcing brightness into her voice. "We always do, right?" Lily nodded, but her eyes held that knowing look that broke Sarah's heart every time. At 7, her daughter already understood what managing really meant: watered-down milk, shared portions, and sometimes, when things got really tight, creative expeditions to places most children never saw. The apartment was clean but shabby, with furniture salvaged from sidewalks and thrift stores. Pictures covered one wall, mostly of the children, but prominently displayed on a small shelf was a photograph of a man in his early 30s, handsome and smiling, with laugh lines around his eyes. Marcus Bennett, the love of Sarah's life, father to all 4 of her children, gone 5 years now in a construction accident that had left her drowning in medical bills and funeral costs. Sarah dressed the triplets in mismatched but clean clothes, her practiced hands moving efficiently through the morning routine. She'd gotten pregnant with the boys just months before Marcus died, and sometimes she wondered if God had given her 3 babies at once as either a blessing or a cosmic joke. Most days, it felt like both. "Mom?" Lily appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her school clothes, a donated dress that was a bit too big, and shoes that would need replacing soon. "Are we? Are we going to be okay?" Sarah pulled her daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of the cheap shampoo in Lily's hair. "Always, baby. We're Bennetts. We're fighters." She didn't mention that the electricity bill was 2 months overdue, or that she'd been skipping meals to make sure the kids had enough, or that the landlord had started making uncomfortable comments about alternative payment arrangements. Lily was 7. She deserved whatever childhood Sarah could salvage for her. After dropping Lily at school, Sarah returned home to find she'd missed a call from the diner. Her manager's voice on the voicemail was apologetic but firm. They were cutting back hours, and Sarah's Tuesday shift was canceled. That was $40 she'd been counting on. The triplets played quietly on the living room floor, too quiet for normal 2-year-olds. They'd learned early that loud meant hungry, and hungry meant Mommy's sad face. Sarah stood in the kitchenette, staring at the nearly empty cabinets, doing math in her head that never quite added up to enough. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lily. "Science trip money due Friday, $15. $15. It might as well have been $1,500. Sarah sank into the threadbare couch, watching her boys build towers with blocks that Marcus had made by hand before he died. They had his eyes, all three of them, that particular shade of blue that reminded her of summer skies and better days. She'd sworn when Marcus died that she'd never let anyone see her family struggling. Pride, maybe, or stubbornness. But 5 years of barely keeping her head above water had taught her that pride didn't feed children or keep the lights on. By afternoon, when it was time to pick up Lily from school, Sarah had made a decision. It wasn't the first time, and she hated herself a little more each time she did it. But desperate times called for desperate measures. She loaded the triplets into their ancient triple stroller, the one with the broken wheel that pulled to the left, and headed toward the nice part of town. Lily met them at the school gates, her backpack bouncing. "Can we get ice cream?" "Not today, sweetheart, but I thought we might take an adventure." Lily's face fell slightly, but she rallied. She always did. What kind of adventure? The kind where we help people who have too much stuff find it a good home. Understanding dawned in Lily's eyes, followed by resignation. She knew what this meant. They'd done it before, knocked on doors in wealthy neighborhoods politely asking if anyone had furniture, clothes, or food they were discarding. Some people were kind. Others looked at them like they were vermin. But Sarah had learned which neighborhoods had the most generous residents, which days the grocery stores threw out still good produce, and which churches had food pantries that didn't ask too many questions. They made their way through the affluent streets of the Pearl District, where houses had actual yards and cars newer than a decade old sat in driveways. Sarah knocked on doors with her most respectable smile, Lily standing quietly beside her, the triplets creating an undeniable picture of need. Most people turned them away politely. One woman gave them a bag of canned goods that were only slightly past their expiration dates. Another offered them some outgrown children's clothes. By the time the light began to fade and the mist turned to actual rain, Sarah had collected enough to make dinner and maybe breakfast. "Mom, we should go home," Lily said, her voice small. "It's getting dark." She was right, but Sarah's eyes had caught on something. A gated community at the end of the street, the kind with immaculate lawns and houses that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. More specifically, she'd noticed what looked like a community dumpster area behind a discreet wall. "One more stop," Sarah said, knowing even as she said it that she was crossing a line. The rain was falling steadier now, and Sarah hurried toward the dumpster area, the stroller wheels protesting. Lily pulled her thin jacket tighter, but she didn't complain. The triplets were mercifully quiet, their little faces peeking out from under the stroller's rain cover. Behind the wall, Sarah found what she'd hoped for, a clean disposal area where the wealthy residents threw out their excess. She'd heard about places like this where people discarded furniture that was merely unfashionable, appliances that were slightly dented, and food that was approaching but hadn't reached its expiration date. "Stay with your brothers," Sarah told Lily, moving toward the bins. But as Sarah began sorting through a promising bag of groceries, something went wrong. The stroller, with its broken wheel and the weight of 3 two-year-olds, began rolling. Lily grabbed for it, but the momentum was too much. The stroller rolled down a slight incline toward a gate Sarah hadn't noticed, one that led to the actual dump, the place where garbage trucks deposited their loads. "Lily, no!" Sarah shouted, dropping the bag and running. But Lily, brave and stubborn and 7 years old, had already chased after her brothers. The gate swung open, and suddenly Sarah was faced with her worst nightmare, her 4 children, her entire world, disappearing into a rain-soaked garbage dump as twilight deepened into darkness. Sarah ran, her shoes slipping in mud and refuse, her lungs burning. The dump stretched before her, a wasteland of discarded things, and somewhere in that maze of trash and shadow were her babies. "Lily!" she screamed. "Lily, where are you?" Only the rain answered, drumming its indifferent rhythm on mountains of garbage, swallowing her desperate cries. 43-year-old Nathan Bennett sat in his corner office on the 32nd floor of the Bennett Holdings Tower, watching the rain streak down floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Portland's downtown skyline. His office was a study in controlled success, modern furniture, tasteful art, and not a single personal photograph. He'd decorated it that way deliberately. Personal meant vulnerable, and Nathan Bennett had learned long ago that vulnerability was a luxury men in his position couldn't afford. His assistant, Claire, had just left after delivering his espresso and reminding him about the 7 o'clock dinner with potential investors. Nathan glanced at his Rolex, 6:15. He had 45 minutes to review the Millbrook acquisition file, freshen up, and make it to the restaurant. The phone on his desk buzzed, his private line, the one only a handful of people had access to. Nathan frowned, reaching for it. Nathan Bennett. For a moment there was only the sound of rain and heavy breathing. Then a child's voice, thin and frightened. "Daddy? Daddy, we're at the dump. I don't know where Mommy went, the boys are crying, and it's dark, and I'm scared." Nathan's hand froze halfway to setting down the phone. "I think you have the wrong number." "Please," the little girl's voice cracked. "I can't find Mommy. We're in the garbage place and one of my brothers threw up and another won't stop crying and the other keeps asking for milk. I used the phone from Mommy's special bag like she showed me, but everything looks the same and I don't know which way we came." Something in the child's voice, the genuine terror barely held in check, made Nathan pause. He was about to explain again that she had the wrong number when the girl said something that stopped his heart. "Please, Daddy. I'm trying to be brave like you always said. I'm using the big leaf to keep the boys dry like when we play camping. But it's really dark and the rain is loud. And what if the garbage trucks come? Daddy." She kept calling him Daddy. And that voice, there was something about it that tugged at a memory Nathan had spent 5 years trying to bury. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" Nathan asked, his business meeting forgotten. "Lily. Lily Bennett. And my brothers are Mason and Tyler and Oliver. They're 2. I'm 7. Daddy, please come get us. I'm really, really scared." Bennett. The girl's last name was Bennett. Nathan's mind raced. It wasn't possible. Marcus had died 5 years ago, and his widow had disappeared with their daughter. Nathan had tried to find them, had hired investigators, but Sarah had vanished completely, taking his niece with her. He'd assumed she'd left the state, maybe even the country, starting over somewhere far from the memories. But if this child was really Lily, Marcus's daughter, then that meant Sarah was here in Portland and she'd had 3 more children. The math clicked into place with sickening clarity. Sarah must have been pregnant when Marcus died. "Lily, I need you to listen very carefully," Nathan said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "Can you see any buildings, any lights?" There's big lights way over there, and I can hear cars, but they sound far away. Everything here is just trash and mud. Daddy, when are you coming?" Nathan was already moving, grabbing his coat and phone, barking orders to Claire as he strode past her desk. "Cancel everything tonight. Everything. And get me the locations of all garbage dumps and disposal facilities in the Portland metro area. Now." In the elevator, Nathan kept Lily talking, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Lily, I need you to keep your brothers close and stay exactly where you are. Don't move, okay? I'm coming to get you right now." "You are?" The relief in her voice was palpable. "Mommy says you're always busy with important work, but you're really coming." Mommy, Sarah. She'd been here all along, struggling, surviving, and she'd never reached out. Pride, shame, fear. Nathan didn't know, but he intended to find out. "I'm coming, sweetheart, I promise. Keep talking to me. Tell me about your brothers." As his driver navigated through rain-slicked streets toward the first dump location, Lily talked. She told him about how one brother liked to sing made-up songs, how another always shared his food even when he was hungry, how the third gave hugs that made everything better. She talked about her school and her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, about how she was learning multiplication and could read chapter books now. And with every word, Nathan's chest grew tighter. This was Marcus's daughter, his niece. And she'd been living God knows what kind of life while he sat in his tower, building his empire, assuming his family was unreachable. The first dump was empty. The second was closed. At the third location, a sprawling waste management facility on the outskirts of town, Nathan's driver pulled up to a chained gate. "Lily, can you hear anything?" "Big machines? Beeping?" "I heard beeping before," Lily said. And there was a really loud crunching sound that scared Oliver. This was it. Nathan was sure of it. "Stay on the phone with me," he ordered, climbing out of his car. The rain immediately soaked through his $1,000 suit. He didn't care. The gate was locked, but Nathan was a man who'd built an empire by refusing to accept obstacles. He found a gap in the fence line and squeezed through, his phone pressed to his ear, Lily's voice his only compass in the darkness. "I'm inside now, Lily. I'm coming. Keep talking to me." "I'm holding the big leaf over the boys," Lily said, her voice stronger now. "Like an umbrella." Oliver stopped crying. "He's sleeping." "Daddy, I'm really glad you answered. I thought maybe you wouldn't, because Mommy says you're very important and very busy." Important? Busy. He'd been too important and too busy to find his own family when they'd needed him. The guilt was a physical weight, but Nathan pushed it aside. Time for self-recrimination later. Right now, he had children to find. He climbed over mountains of refuse, his dress shoes slipping in mud and worse, his flashlight app cutting thin beams through the darkness. The dump was massive, a labyrinth of waste and shadow. "Lily, I need you to do something for me. Can you see my light?" I'm going to wave it back and forth. I see it, over here, we're over here." Nathan ran, heedless of what he was running through, following the direction of Lily's voice. And then, in the beam of his phone's light, he saw them. 4 children huddled together on a relatively dry patch of ground. The oldest, a little girl with blonde hair plastered to her face, held a huge leaf over 3 tiny boys squeezed together on a broken stroller. She was soaked through, shivering, but her arms never wavered in protecting her brothers from the rain. "Lily?" Nathan breathed. The girl looked up, and Nathan saw Marcus in her face, the shape of her eyes, the set of her jaw, the defiant tilt of her chin, even in the midst of fear. "Daddy!" Lily's face crumpled with relief. "You came! You really came!" Nathan knelt in the garbage and mud, not caring about his ruined clothes, and pulled all 4 children into his arms. The triplets woke at the contact, and one of them immediately grabbed Nathan's tie. "I've got you," Nathan whispered, his voice rough with emotions he couldn't name. "I've got all of you. You're safe now." "Mommy's lost," Lily said against his chest. "We have to find Mommy." Nathan looked around the vast dump, illuminated only by distant security lights and his phone's weakening beam. Sarah was out there somewhere, probably frantic, searching for her children. His children. Marcus's children. Family. Nathan pulled out his phone and dialed 911 with one hand while keeping the other wrapped around the 4 kids. "I need police and paramedics at the Riverview Waste Management Facility. I have 4 children who need medical attention, and I need a search team. There's a woman lost in the dump." While they waited for help, Nathan kept the children close, using his body to shield them from the rain. Lily talked nonstop now, the fear pouring out in words. "We didn't mean to come here. We were just looking for cans and stuff people don't want anymore. The stroller rolled and I tried to stop it, but it was too heavy. And then Mommy ran after us, but we couldn't find our way back. I called the number from Mommy's phone, the one she said to use for emergencies. I thought it was going to you, but maybe I pushed the wrong button." Nathan's heart clenched. The emergency contact on Sarah's phone should have been his number, but 5 years ago, they'd had a falling out. After Marcus's funeral, when Nathan had offered to help financially, Sarah had thrown his check back in his face, accused him of trying to buy her grief, and told him she never wanted to see him again. He'd respected her wishes, but he'd never changed his number, never stopped hoping she might call. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The cavalry was arriving. By the time paramedics reached them, the triplets had fallen asleep again, exhausted and trusting in their uncle's arms. Lily refused to let go of Nathan's hand. "Will you stay with us until Mommy comes back?" she asked, her blue eyes, Marcus's eyes, fixed on his face. "I'm not going anywhere," Nathan promised. The paramedics checked the children while police officers organized a search team with proper lights and equipment. Nathan watched them work with clinical efficiency, but his mind was racing ahead, planning, strategizing, the way he did when facing a major business challenge. But this wasn't business. This was family. The family he'd lost and somehow impossibly found again in a garbage dump on a rainy Tuesday night. An hour later, they found Sarah. She was on the far side of the dump, hoarse from screaming her children's names, covered in filth, her hands bleeding from climbing over sharp edges and broken glass. When the police officers told her they had her children, that they were safe, she collapsed. They brought her to the ambulance where Nathan waited with the kids. Sarah was wrapped in a blanket, her face streaked with mud and tears. When she saw her children, alive and whole, she let out a sound that was half sob, half prayer. Lily. Oh God, Lily. Mason, Tyler, Oliver. And then she saw Nathan. Sarah froze, her eyes going wide with shock, then narrowing with something that looked like horror. No, she whispered. No, 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 what are you doing here? Mommy! Lily launched herself at her mother. Daddy came, I called him, and he came and found us. Sarah's eyes met Nathan's over Lily's head, and in them Nathan saw a complex storm of emotions. Relief, fear, shame, anger, and something else he couldn't quite identify. He's not your daddy, Sarah said quietly, pulling Lily close. Your daddy is gone, baby. This is your Uncle Nathan. The words hung in the rain-soaked air between them. 5 years of silence and hurt and pride made manifest. Nathan stood slowly, still holding one of the triplets who had refused to let go of his jacket. We need to talk, Nathan said quietly. We have nothing to talk about, Sarah replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Sarah, don't. She cut him off, her voice sharp. Don't you dare show up now after all this time and try to— Your daughter called me, Nathan interrupted, from your emergency contact list. She called me because she was terrified and lost and she needed help. So yes, Sarah, we absolutely need to talk. The paramedic stepped between them, professional and firm. Ma'am, we need to get you and your children to the hospital for examination. Sarah looked at her 4 children, dirty, exhausted, but safe, and the fight seemed to drain out of her. She nodded mutely. Nathan followed the ambulance to the hospital in his town car, his ruined suit leaving mud stains on the leather seats. His driver, George, wisely asked no questions. At the hospital, while doctors examined the children, Nathan stood outside the examination rooms making phone calls. To his lawyer, to his accountant, to his personal assistant. He set wheels in motion, made arrangements, pulled strings. Because one thing had become crystal clear in the last 3 hours. His brother's family had been suffering while he lived in luxury. That ended tonight. A nurse emerged from the examination room. Mr. Bennett, the children are all fine, mostly just cold, scared, and hungry. The little girl, Lily, is asking for you. Nathan found Lily in a hospital bed, clean now, wearing an oversized hospital gown, looking impossibly small against the white sheets. When she saw him, her face lit up. Uncle Nathan, she said, trying out the title. Mommy says you're not my daddy, you're my uncle. But you came when I called. That's what daddies do, right? Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, his throat tight. Your daddy would be very proud of you, Lily. You were so brave tonight. You protected your brothers and stayed calm and made sure everyone stayed safe. Mommy says Daddy died before the boys were born. I don't remember him very much anymore. Lily's voice was small. Is that bad? No, sweetheart, that's not bad. You were very young, but I remember him, and I can tell you about him anytime you want. Did he really look like me? Just like you, same hair, same eyes, same stubborn chin. Lily touched her chin, considering this. Then she looked at Nathan with heartbreaking directness. Are you going to leave now? Mommy says people always leave. Nathan thought about Sarah's words, about her pride and her pain, about 5 years of struggle that he'd known nothing about. I'm not leaving, he said firmly. I'm your uncle, which means you're my family. And I take care of my family. Promise? I promise. Sarah appeared in the doorway, clean now, wearing donated clothes from the hospital, her hair still damp. Her face was carefully neutral, but Nathan could see the exhaustion in every line of her body. Lily needs to sleep, Sarah said. We all do. Nathan stood. Where are you staying tonight? We'll go home, our apartment. At 10 o'clock at night after the day you've had? Nathan kept his voice level. Sarah, please, let me help. We don't need your help. But the words lacked force. Mommy, Lily said quietly, I'm really tired. Can we please just rest? My head hurts. Something in Sarah's expression crumbled. She moved to the bed, gathering Lily close. Okay, she whispered. Okay, baby. Nathan made the arrangements. A suite at the Heathman Hotel, one of Portland's finest. Room service for 5, with simple food for exhausted children. And tomorrow they would talk. As Nathan finally made it back to his penthouse at 2 a.m, still in his ruined suit, he stood at his own floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the rain-soaked city. Somewhere out there, in a luxury hotel suite he'd paid for, were his brother's widow and 4 children who carried his family's name and blood. Tomorrow everything would change. Nathan had built a business empire through strategy, determination, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Now he would apply those same skills to the most important project of his life, his family. Whatever Sarah's objections, whatever pride stood between them, whatever hurt lingered from their last encounter, none of it mattered more than those 4 children. Nathan Bennett had found his family, and he wasn't letting them go again. The morning sun streamed through the hotel suite windows when Sarah woke, momentarily disoriented by the luxury surrounding her. The bed was too soft, the sheets too fine, the room too quiet. For a panicked moment, she couldn't remember where she was, and her hand reached instinctively for her children. They were safe. Lily sprawled beside her in the king-sized bed, blonde hair fanned across the pillow. In the adjoining room, the triplets slept in a crib the hotel staff had provided, their small bodies peaceful in sleep. The events of the previous night came flooding back. The dump, the terror, the impossible appearance of Nathan Bennett. Sarah closed her eyes, willing it all to be a nightmare. A soft knock at the door made her jump. Sarah grabbed the hotel robe and padded to the door, checking the peephole. Nathan stood in the hallway, looking considerably more put together than he had last night, holding a cardboard carrier with coffee cups and a large bag that smelled like heaven. Sarah opened the door a crack. "What are you doing here?" "Good morning to you too," Nathan said mildly. "I brought breakfast and coffee." "You still take it black with 2 sugars?" The fact that he remembered how she took her coffee after 5 years made something in Sarah's chest twist. "You shouldn't be here." "Sarah, we need to talk. Let me in, or I'll have this conversation in the hallway where anyone can hear." Lily's voice called from the bedroom. "Mommy? Is that Uncle Nathan?" Sarah's resistance crumbled. She opened the door wider, letting Nathan enter the suite. Lily emerged from the bedroom, rubbing her eyes, wearing the same oversized hospital gown. When she saw Nathan, her face lit up. "You came back." "I promised I would," Nathan said, setting down the coffee and food. "I brought pancakes and eggs and something called a breakfast burrito, though I wasn't sure if 7-year-olds ate those." "I'm 7.5, Lily corrected, then looked at her mother. "Can we eat? I'm really hungry." Sarah wanted to refuse, to maintain the wall she'd spent 5 years building, but her daughter's hopeful face and the smell of real food demolished her defenses. "Go wake your brothers, gently." While Lily disappeared into the adjoining room, Nathan began unpacking the food. "I wasn't sure what the boys liked, so I got a variety." "They're 2. They'll eat anything that doesn't eat them first," Sarah said, then immediately regretted the bitter tone. Nathan paused, a coffee cup halfway to the table. "Sarah, I know you're angry." "Angry?" Sarah's voice rose despite her best efforts. "Angry doesn't begin to cover it. You disappear for 5 years and then you swoop in like some kind of savior. You have no idea what we've been through." "You're right. I don't. Because you made sure I couldn't know." Nathan's voice was level, but there was an edge to it. "You threw my help back in my face, told me you never wanted to see me again, and then you vanished." "You offered me money," Sarah spat. "At Marcus's funeral, you tried to write me a check like I was some kind of charity case. I was trying to help. I didn't need your guilt money." "Mommy?" Lily stood in the doorway, holding Oliver, with Mason and Tyler clinging to her legs. All 4 children looked frightened. Sarah immediately softened, moving to take Oliver from Lily's arms. "It's okay, babies. Mommy's just talking to Uncle Nathan." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, visibly collecting himself. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have raised my voice." He looked at Lily. "Come on, let's eat breakfast before it gets cold." The meal was awkward, punctuated by the triplets' happy babbling as they devoured pancakes and eggs. Lily watched Nathan with open curiosity, asking questions between bites. "Do you really work in that tall building downtown?" "I do. The one with all the windows that looks like a mirror?" "That's the one. What do you do there?" Nathan considered the question. "I help people invest money. I make decisions about which companies to support and which buildings to develop." "That sounds boring," Lily said with the brutal honesty of childhood. Nathan surprised Sarah by laughing. "Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's like solving a very complicated puzzle." "I like puzzles," Lily said. "I'm really good at them. Your father was too." Nathan's voice softened. He could look at a problem and see solutions nobody else could. Lily's eyes brightened. "Really? Will you tell me more about him?" Sarah's hands tightened on her coffee cup, but she said nothing. How could she deny Lily this? Marcus's brother was the only family connection her daughter had to her father. After breakfast, while the children played with the hotel's complimentary toys, Nathan and Sarah finally had the conversation that had been 5 years in the making. "Show me where you live," Nathan said quietly. "Why?" "Because I need to understand. Last night, Lily said you were looking for cans and stuff people don't want. Sarah, were you dumpster diving?" The shame burned in Sarah's throat. "Sometimes, when things get tight. It's not, we don't usually." She stopped, unable to find words that would make it sound less desperate than it was. "Your address," Nathan said, his voice carefully neutral. "Please." Sarah gave him the address on Hawthorne Street. She watched Nathan's face as he clearly pulled up the location on his phone, watched his expression shift from neutral to troubled. "That neighborhood is what I can afford," Sarah cut him off. "I work double shifts at a diner when they'll give them to me. I keep a roof over my kids' heads and food in their bellies. We manage." "Managing isn't enough," Nathan said quietly. "Sarah, you were pregnant with triplets when Marcus died. Where was I? Why didn't anyone tell me? I didn't know I was pregnant until after the funeral. And by then," Sarah's voice broke, "by then you'd made it clear what you thought of me. The check, Nathan. The way you looked at me like I was just another problem to be solved with money. That's not—" Nathan stopped, took a breath. "Maybe that's how it seemed, but Sarah, I was grieving too. Marcus was my baby brother, my only family. And when he died, I didn't know how to help except the only way I knew how. With money. Yes, with money. Because money solves problems. It pays medical bills and funeral costs and rent. It keeps you from having to search through garbage for food." Nathan's control slipped again, pain and frustration evident in his voice. Sarah looked away, blinking back tears. "I couldn't take your money. It felt like accepting would mean Marcus's death could be fixed with a check. Like he wasn't worth more than whatever number you wrote down." "Jesus, Sarah." Nathan's voice was rough. "Is that really what you thought? That I was putting a price on my brother's life?" What else was I supposed to think? They sat in silence for a long moment. In the other room, Lily was teaching the triplets a clapping game, their laughter a sharp contrast to the heavy atmosphere. Nathan spoke first. "The photograph, the one on your shelf at home." Sarah stiffened. "You went to my apartment?" "The paramedics needed your insurance information. They gave me your purse. I saw your address on your license, and I—" He paused. "I needed to see where you'd been living. How you'd been living. You had no right—" "I saw Marcus's picture," Nathan continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Front and center and pictures of the kids everywhere. No pictures of friends, no pictures of anyone else. Just you and 4 children alone. We're not alone. We have each other. Do the triplets know they had a father? Have you told them about Marcus?" "They're 2 years old, Nathan. What exactly am I supposed to tell them?" "And Lily? Does she know her uncle exists? That she has family besides you?" The accusation in his voice stung because it was true. Sarah had erased Nathan from their lives as completely as if he'd never existed. She'd told herself it was for the best, that they didn't need his judgment or his pity or his money. But looking at Lily's face last night when Nathan had appeared, Seeing the way her daughter had clung to this man she didn't remember, Sarah couldn't deny the truth. She hadn't been protecting her children from Nathan. She'd been protecting her own pride. "I was wrong," Sarah said quietly. "Last night when Lily called you, when you came, I was wrong to keep you away." Nathan looked startled, as if he'd expected more resistance. "But that doesn't mean I'm going to let you just waltz in and take over our lives," Sarah continued, her voice strengthening. "We're not a project for you to fix. We're not a problem to be solved. We're people, Nathan. We're your family, and we deserve to be treated like family, not like a charitable cause." "Then let me treat you like family," Nathan said. "Let me help. Really help. Not by writing a check and walking away, but by being present, by being the uncle those kids deserve, by honoring Marcus's memory the right way, by taking care of the people he loved." Sarah wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at her to maintain her independence, to not become indebted to this man who represented everything she'd run from. But she looked at her children. Lily with her too big dress, the triplets in their mismatched clothes, all of them fed and safe because Nathan had answered a phone call in the middle of his business day and dropped everything to rescue 4 kids he didn't even know were his family. "Okay," Sarah whispered, "but we do this my way. We set boundaries. We move slowly. And if at any point I think you're trying to control us or buy us or turn us into some kind of—" "I won't," Nathan interrupted. "Sarah, I swear to you, this isn't about control. This is about family. It's about second chances. It's about 4 children who deserve more than what? Than a mother who loves them? Than a home where they're safe? Than a mother who's working herself to death trying to do everything alone." Nathan's frustration broke through again. Than living one emergency away from disaster. Last night, what if Lily hadn't been able to call for help? What if— "But she did call," Sarah said. "And you answered, and you came. So maybe—" Her voice caught. "Maybe we can figure out how to do this. Together." The word felt foreign on her tongue. Together. She'd been alone for so long that she'd forgotten what it meant to share the burden. Nathan stood, moving to the window. Portland spread out below, the morning sun burning off the rain clouds. "I want to see where you live. I want to understand your situation completely before we make any plans." Sarah's first instinct was to refuse, to hide the shabby reality of their daily life. But what was the point? He'd already seen them at their lowest, covered in garbage, desperate and terrified. How much worse could the truth be? "Fine," Sarah said, "but I need to get the kids dressed first. And Nathan, whatever you're thinking about what we need, whatever grand plans you're making in that business brain of yours, I get veto power. They're my children. I make the final decisions." "Agreed," Nathan said immediately. "But Sarah, I get to make my case. I get to show you what I'm offering before you refuse it." It was the closest thing to a compromise either of them was capable of. An hour later, Nathan's town car pulled up outside the apartment building on Hawthorne Street. Sarah watched his face as he took in the peeling paint, the broken front steps, the general air of neglect that characterized her building. "Say it," Sarah challenged. "Go ahead and tell me how inappropriate this is for children." "I wasn't going to say that," Nathan replied, but his jaw was tight. Inside, the apartment looked even smaller with Nathan's presence filling it. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, and in his expensive suit, he seemed to belong to a different species than the threadbare furniture and patched walls of Sarah's home. But Nathan didn't comment on any of it. Instead, he went straight to the shelf with Marcus's picture. He stood there for a long moment, his back to Sarah, his shoulders rigid. "I miss him," Nathan said quietly. "Every day. I built this empire partly to honor him, to prove that the Bennett name meant something. But what good is any of it if his own children are struggling?" "They're not struggling," Sarah said automatically, then stopped. "Okay, yes, we struggle sometimes. But we're together and we're fighting and they know they're loved. That's what Marcus would have wanted. Marcus would have wanted them safe, fed, educated, with opportunities and choices and futures that aren't limited by poverty." Nathan turned to face her and Sarah was shocked to see tears in his eyes. He would have wanted what every parent wants, for their children to have more than they did. "And you think money can give them that?" I think money can remove obstacles. It can open doors. It can ensure that a smart little girl like Lily doesn't have to worry about whether there will be dinner tonight or whether the electricity will be on tomorrow. Nathan moved closer, his voice intense. Sarah, I'm not trying to replace Marcus. I'm not trying to buy your affection or control your life. I'm trying to be what my brother would have been if he'd lived, a provider and protector for his family. Sarah sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. What exactly are you proposing? Let me set up a trust fund for the children's education and future. Let me handle the back rent and bills so you're not constantly treading water. No. Sarah's voice was firm. No trust funds, no bill paying. That's exactly what I said I didn't want. I'm not a charity case. Nathan's frustration was evident. Then what will you accept? Sarah thought about Lily's face when she'd asked about the science trip money, about the triplets' too small shoes, about the electricity bill she couldn't pay and the landlord's increasingly uncomfortable attention. A job, Sarah said finally. I'll accept a job. A real one. With a salary I actually earn. Something with better hours so I can see my kids more. And maybe, she swallowed her pride, maybe help with childcare while I work. Nothing I don't earn, Nathan. Nothing that makes me dependent on your goodwill. Nathan was quiet for a moment, clearly recalculating his approach. I can do that. My executive assistant has been asking for help. The position would be... I don't have executive assistant skills, Sarah interrupted. You managed Marcus's construction business books for 2 years, Nathan countered. You organized crews, handled scheduling, dealt with suppliers. Those are exactly the skills Claire needs help with. It was true. Sarah had forgotten that she'd once been competent at something other than stretching $1 and keeping 4 kids alive. What about the kids? She asked. There's a daycare in my building. High quality, subsidized for employees. The triplets could go there. And Lily... Nathan paused. There's a private school near my office. Excellent academics, small class sizes. I could get her in. Absolutely not, Sarah said immediately. No private school. Lily stays at her public school with her friends. Sarah, the school she's in now, has teachers who care about her and friends she's known since kindergarten. She stays there. Non-negotiable. Nathan raised his hands in surrender. Fine. Public school it is. But I want to cover the science trip and any other fees. As her uncle, not as charity. Sarah wanted to refuse, but she thought about Lily's face when she'd asked about the trip money. Okay, but only school-related expenses, and you don't get to decide what activities she does. I'm still her mother. Understood. They hammered out details for another hour, establishing boundaries and rules. Sarah would start working as Claire's assistant in 2 weeks, giving her time to transition the triplets into daycare. Nathan would pay for the boys' child care directly to the facility, and Sarah's salary would be fair market rate for her skills, nothing inflated. One more thing, Nathan said as he prepared to leave. I want regular time with the kids, dinners, weekends, holidays. I want to be part of their lives, not just a name on a paycheck. Sarah's instinct was to resist, but she looked around her tiny apartment, at the picture of Marcus smiling from the shelf, and she thought about what he would have wanted for their children. Sunday dinners, she said. Once a month to start. We'll see how it goes. Twice a month, Nathan countered. Fine, twice a month, but here in our home, not at some fancy restaurant where the kids feel out of place. I can work with that. Nathan extended his hand. Partners? Sarah looked at his hand for a long moment before shaking it. Partners. But Nathan? If you hurt my kids, if you get them attached and then disappear, I will make you regret it in ways your business rivals can only dream about. Nathan's smile was genuine. Noted. But Sarah, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now. After Nathan left, Sarah stood in her quiet apartment and let herself feel for the first time in 5 years the possibility of hope. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and still tinged with distrust, but it was there. Lily emerged from the bedroom where she'd been reading to her brothers. Is Uncle Nathan really coming back? Yes, baby. He's really coming back. Good, Lily said, snuggling against her mother. I like him. He has kind eyes. Like Daddy's picture. Sarah held her daughter close and looked at the photograph of Marcus, wondering if somehow, impossibly, he'd orchestrated this unlikely reunion. A wrong number that was actually right. A rescue that was really a redemption. "I think your daddy would like that you like him," Sarah whispered. "I think he'd be happy we're finally letting family back in." Outside, the sun broke fully through the clouds, streaming through the apartment window and illuminating Marcus's photograph. For just a moment, it looked like he was smiling wider, approving. Sarah chose to believe he was. 2 weeks passed in a blur of transitions and adjustments. Sarah stood in front of the mirror in her apartment, smoothing down the simple but professional navy dress Nathan had insisted on buying for her first day. She'd argued about it naturally, but he'd made a compelling point. Appearing professional was part of the job, and he couldn't have his assistant showing up in clothes that were threadbare and worn. The compromise was that Sarah picked the dress herself from a department store clearance rack, and Nathan paid for it as an advance on her salary. Small victories in the ongoing negotiation of their new relationship. "Mommy, you look pretty." Lily appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her school uniform. In the 2 weeks since their rescue, Lily had transformed. The dark circles under her eyes had faded. She'd gained a little weight, and most importantly, she smiled more. "Thank you, sweetheart." Sarah knelt down to Lily's level. "Are you sure you're okay with the new morning routine? I know it's a lot of changes." "I like it," Lily said simply. "Uncle Nathan's driver is really nice, and he tells me stories about when Daddy was little. Did you know Daddy once put a frog in Uncle Nathan's bed?" Sarah laughed despite her nerves. "I didn't know that. What else has George been telling you?" "Lots of stuff. About how Daddy used to build things even when he was my age, and how he was always making Uncle Nathan laugh." Lily's expression grew serious. "I think Uncle Nathan was really sad when Daddy died. Like us." "I think you're right, baby." In the next room, the triplets were already awake and babbling to each other in their crib. At 2 years old, they'd developed their own language, a mixture of real words and sounds only they understood. Sarah had worried endlessly about how they'd adjust to daycare, but Nathan's facility had experienced staff who specialized in multiples. The doorbell rang precisely at 7:30. George, Nathan's driver, stood in the hallway with his gentle smile and patient demeanor. In 2 weeks, he'd become as much a part of their routine as breakfast. "Good morning, Miss Sarah, Miss Lily," George said, tipping his cap. "Ready for the big day?" Sarah gathered the triplets, the diaper bag, Lily's backpack, and her own purse, a juggling act she'd perfected over 2 years. George smoothly took the diaper bag in Lily's hand, leading the way to the car. The town car was spacious enough for all of them, with 3 car seats already installed for the boys. As George drove through Portland's morning traffic, Sarah watched the city transform from her working-class neighborhood to the gleaming towers of downtown. They dropped Lily at her school first. Sarah kissed her daughter goodbye and watched her run to join her friends, backpack bouncing. Then it was to the daycare facility on the 3rd floor of Bennett Holdings Tower. The space was nothing like Sarah had imagined. It was bright and clean, with colorful murals, age-appropriate toys, and a staff-to-child ratio that would have been impossible at any facility she could have afforded. The director, a warm woman named Patricia, greeted them with genuine enthusiasm. "Mason, Tyler, Oliver, welcome back, boys." Patricia had met the triplets twice before during orientation visits. "We're going to have so much fun today." Sarah handed over each boy, her heart clenching as they were absorbed into the organized chaos of toddler playtime. Mason went easily, already spotting toys he wanted. Tyler hesitated, then saw another child with a truck and toddled over. Oliver, always the most sensitive, clung to Sarah's neck. "Mommy stay?" he asked, his blue eyes, Marcus's eyes, wide with worry. "Mommy has to work, baby, but I'm right upstairs and I'll come get you this afternoon, I promise." "Miss Patricia will take very good care of you," Patricia said, extending her arms. "We have graham crackers for snack time, and finger painting." Oliver considered this, then slowly allowed himself to be transferred. Sarah left quickly before she could change her mind and scoop all 3 boys back into her arms. The executive floor was on the 32nd story, a world of glass and steel and hushed efficiency. Claire Donovan, Nathan's executive assistant, met Sarah at the elevator with a warm smile and 2 cups of coffee. "You look terrified," Claire said without preamble. "Don't be. I'm not a scary boss, I promise. And Nathan is actually pretty reasonable when you get past the intimidating CEO exterior." Sarah liked her immediately. Claire's office was adjacent to Nathan's, with a smaller desk that would be Sarah's workspace. Claire spent the morning walking Sarah through the systems, the schedules, the expectations. It was overwhelming but manageable, and Sarah found herself falling into rhythms she'd forgotten she knew. Around 11, Nathan's office door opened, and he emerged with a man Sarah didn't recognize. Nathan's eyes found Sarah immediately, and something in his expression softened. "Sarah, this is Richard Jameson from Millbrook Industries." "Richard, this is Sarah Mitchell, Claire's new assistant." Richard shook Sarah's hand, but his attention was already moving past her, the way people in power often looked through support staff. Nathan's jaw tightened slightly, but he said nothing. After Richard left, Nathan stopped by Sarah's desk. "How's it going?" "Good, Claire's been wonderful." "And the boys settled in okay at daycare?" "Oliver?" Nathan asked, surprising Sarah with the specificity. "Cried a little when I left, but Patricia texted me a picture 30 minutes later of him finger painting." He was smiling. Nathan's expression warmed. He's a sensitive kid, like Marcus was at that age. It was still strange hearing Nathan talk about her children with such familiarity. They'd had 4 Sunday dinners in 2 weeks. Nathan had negotiated the increase from twice monthly, and she'd watched him learn her children's personalities, their quirks, their fears and joys. Mason was the bold one, fearless and always into everything. Tyler was the peacemaker, sharing toys and offering hugs when his brothers cried. Oliver was thoughtful and observant, watching everything before deciding whether to participate. And Lily had attached herself to Nathan with a fierceness that both comforted and terrified Sarah. Her daughter had been starved for male attention, for a father figure, and Nathan was filling that void with a dedication that seemed genuine. But Sarah couldn't shake the fear that it was too much, too fast. That Nathan would get bored or overwhelmed. That the reality of 4 children would prove too much for a man who'd spent 43 years building a business empire instead of a family. "Penny for your thoughts?" Nathan asked, and Sarah realized she'd been staring at her computer screen without seeing it. "Just adjusting," Sarah said. "It's a lot of change." "Good change?" Sarah met his eyes. "I don't know yet. Ask me in a month." Nathan smiled, but there was something vulnerable in it. "Fair enough." The day passed in a whirlwind of phone calls, scheduling, and the 1,000 small tasks that kept the executive office running. Sarah discovered she was good at it, that her brain remembered how to organize and prioritize and anticipate needs. At 3:30, she went downstairs to collect the triplets. They were covered in paint and snack crumbs and absolutely delighted with themselves. Oliver ran to her with a painting he'd made, mostly brown and purple swirls with some handprints. "For Mommy," he announced proudly. "It's beautiful, baby. We'll put it on the refrigerator." After collecting Lily from school, George drove them home. The apartment felt smaller somehow after a day in the spacious elegance of Bennett Holdings, but it was theirs, and Sarah felt the tension leave her shoulders as soon as she walked through the door. That evening, as she was making dinner, actual groceries, not the scraps and bargains she'd been subsisting on, there was a knock at the door. Nathan stood in the hallway, wearing jeans and a casual shirt instead of his usual suit, holding a bag from a local Italian restaurant. "I know it's not Sunday," he said before Sarah could protest, "but I thought you might be too tired to cook after your first day. This isn't charity," he added quickly. "This is family bringing dinner." "There's a difference." Sarah wanted to argue, to maintain the boundaries they'd established, but the smell of garlic and basil was intoxicating, and she was exhausted. "Come in," she said. The triplets mobbed Nathan immediately, all 3 boys clamoring for his attention. He scooped up Mason with one arm and Tyler with the other, while Oliver attached himself to Nathan's leg. Uncle Nathan, I painted today," Oliver announced. "I want to see," Nathan said. letting the boys drag him toward the refrigerator where Sarah had hung the artwork. Lily emerged from her room, homework in hand. "Uncle Nathan, I'm stuck on this math problem. Can you help?" And just like that, Nathan was absorbed into the chaos of their evening routine, helping with homework at the small kitchen table while Sarah set out dinner. It felt disturbingly domestic, like they were a real family instead of a widow and her brother-in-law playing pretend. Over dinner, the Italian food was far better than anything Sarah could have made. Nathan asked Lily about school, listened to the triplets' incomprehensible stories, and made everyone laugh with a story about Marcus's childhood misadventures. "Daddy tried to build a treehouse?" Lily asked, eyes wide. "Tried is the key word," Nathan said. "It collapsed the first time anyone climbed in it. Your grandmother made him rebuild it with proper supports. Marcus was a great builder, but he was also 12 and impatient." "I'm impatient too," Lily admitted. "Mommy says I get it from Daddy." "Your dad wanted everything done yesterday," Nathan agreed. "But he also worked harder than anyone I knew. When he decided to do something, nothing could stop him." Sarah listened to Nathan bringing Marcus to life for children who'd never known him, and felt something crack open in her chest. This was what she'd denied her children for 5 years: family, history, connection to the father they'd lost. After dinner, Nathan helped clean up despite Sarah's protests, then sat on the floor with the triplets while they showed him their toys. Mason brought out the wooden blocks Marcus had made, and Nathan went very still. "Marcus made these," he said quietly, running his fingers over the worn wood. "Before he died," Sarah confirmed. "He was making a whole set, but he only finished 20 before—" Her voice caught. Nathan picked up one block, turning it over. "He always did beautiful work. Even when we were kids, everything he built was solid, meant to last." "The blocks have lasted," Sarah said. "The boys love them." "What else did he make?" Sarah showed him the toy box in the corner, rough but sturdy with each child's name carved into the lid. Marcus had made it when Lily was born, planning to fill it with handmade toys for all the children they'd have. He'd only had time to make Lily's crib, her toy box, and the blocks before the construction accident took him. "He was going to make a rocking horse next," Sarah said. "He'd sketched it out, had the wood picked out, but then—" "Would you let me finish it?" Nathan asked suddenly. "I'm not the craftsman Marcus was, but I could hire someone who works with wood the way he did. We could use his sketches and make the rocking horse for the kids." Sarah's throat tightened. "You don't have to." "I want to," Nathan interrupted. "For Marcus. For the kids. For—" He stopped, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I spent 5 years building buildings and making money and thinking that was how I honored my brother. But this—" He gestured around the small apartment, at the 4 children playing happily, at the life Marcus had created before death stole him away. "This is the real legacy. This is what matters." Sarah sank onto the couch, suddenly unable to hold back tears. "I was so angry at you. For 5 years I blamed you for not understanding, for trying to solve grief with money. But I never told you I was pregnant. I never gave you a chance to know your own family. I was so wrapped up in my own pain that I—" "Stop," Nathan said gently, sitting beside her. "We both made mistakes. We both let pride and pain drive us apart. But we're here now. We're fixing it. That's what matters." "What if I can't do this?" Sarah whispered. "What if I can't let you in? What if I'm so used to doing everything alone that I sabotage this?" "Then we'll figure it out together," Nathan said. "Sarah, I'm not going anywhere. I've already missed 5 years of these kids' lives. I'm not missing anymore." Lily appeared beside them, her small face worried. "Mommy, why are you crying? Did Uncle Nathan make you sad?" "No, baby," Sarah managed, pulling Lily onto her lap. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy too. These are happy tears. Because Uncle Nathan is family." "Yes, because Uncle Nathan is family." Lily considered this, then looked at Nathan. "Are you going to be our daddy now?" Sarah's heart stopped. Nathan's expression was carefully controlled, but she could see the emotion roiling beneath the surface. "Your daddy will always be your daddy," Nathan said carefully. Nobody can replace him, but I can be your uncle who loves you very much and will always be here for you. Is that okay? Lily thought about this with the seriousness of a 7-year-old weighing the universe. Okay, but can I still call you when I'm scared? Like when I was at the dump? Always, Nathan promised. Anytime, anywhere. You call me and I'll come. That's what family does. Lily threw her arms around Nathan's neck, and Sarah watched her daughter hold on to her uncle like he was an anchor in a storm. And maybe he was. Maybe that's what family was supposed to be. Anchors for each other when the world got too rough. That night, after Nathan left and the children were asleep, Sarah stood in her kitchen looking at the painting Oliver had made, now hanging on the refrigerator next to Lily's school calendar and the triplets' handprints from last month. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Your first day was a success. Claire says you're a natural. And thank you for letting me stay for dinner. It meant more than you know. Sarah typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on. Thank you for finishing what Marcus started. The rocking horse will mean everything to them. Nathan's response was immediate. To them and to me. Good night, Sarah. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow. There would be a tomorrow and another one after that. Days building into weeks, weeks into months. A future that wasn't just survival, but something that might, incredibly, become a life worth living. Sarah touched Marcus's picture on the shelf, running her finger along the frame. I think I'm finally ready to let someone help us, she whispered to the photograph. I think you'd approve. The picture stayed silent, but in her heart, Sarah could hear Marcus's voice. About time, Sarah. About damn time. 6 weeks after that first day at work, Sarah was beginning to believe in the possibility of stability. The routine had solidified into something comfortable. Morning rides with George, days at the office where she'd discovered she was genuinely good at her job, afternoons with the children who were thriving in their new circumstances. The apartment on Hawthorne Street was still small, still shabby, but now the electricity stayed on, the fridge stayed full, and Sarah didn't wake up every morning calculating which bill she could delay paying. It wasn't luxury, but it was security, and after 5 years of chaos, security felt like a miracle. Nathan had become a fixture in their lives, appearing for dinners at least twice a week, helping with homework, teaching Mason how to stack blocks properly, reading stories to Tyler and Oliver in different voices that made them shriek with laughter. With Lily, he was building something deeper, a relationship that went beyond uncle and niece into something that looked suspiciously like parent and child. Sarah tried not to think too hard about what that meant, or about the way her heart had started doing complicated things when Nathan smiled at her across the dinner table, or about how his presence had stopped feeling like an intrusion and started feeling like coming home. It was a Tuesday evening in mid-December when everything changed again. Sarah was at her desk finishing up some scheduling for an upcoming board meeting when Claire appeared with a strange expression on her face. Sarah, there's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent. Who? Claire's discomfort was obvious. He says he's your landlord, Gerald Morrison. Sarah's stomach dropped. Morrison was the reason she'd worked so hard to never be late on rent, never give him any excuse to come around. He was the kind of landlord who leered at single mothers and made suggestions about flexible payment arrangements that made Sarah's skin crawl. Tell him I'll meet him in the lobby, Sarah said, already standing. Actually, Nathan wants to sit in on the meeting. Claire's tone suggested this wasn't optional. Sarah wanted to refuse, to handle her own problems the way she'd been doing for 5 years, but something in Claire's expression made her pause. What's going on? Just let Nathan handle this, trust me. They met in a small conference room. Morrison was exactly as Sarah remembered, mid-50s, slightly overweight, with eyes that lingered too long in all the wrong places. When he saw Sarah, his smile was all teeth and no warmth. Mrs. Mitchell, so nice to see you in such elevated circumstances. Nathan entered before Sarah could respond, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He moved with the kind of controlled power that came from boardrooms and hostile takeovers, and Morrison's smile faltered. Mr. Morrison, Nathan said, not offering his hand. I'm Nathan Bennett. What can we do for you? Morrison recovered his composure. though Sarah noticed he angled his body slightly away from Nathan. I'm here to discuss Mrs. Mitchell's lease. There are some irregularities I need to address. What irregularities? Sarah asked, her heart pounding. I paid this month's rent on time. Well, that's just it, Morrison said, his smile turning predatory. You see, when you signed your lease 5 years ago, you were unemployed. You lied on the application about your income and employment status. That's grounds for immediate eviction. Sarah felt the floor drop out from under her. I didn't lie. I had money from Marcus's life insurance settlement. I showed you the bank statements. Temporary funds don't constitute stable income. You should have disclosed that you were unemployed. Morrison pulled out a folder of papers. I have grounds to evict you immediately. However, I'm willing to be flexible for the right considerations. And the way he said considerations made Sarah's skin crawl. This was what she'd feared for 5 years. The reason she'd worked herself to exhaustion to never be late, never give him an excuse. Nathan moved closer to Sarah, a subtle positioning that put him between her and Morrison. What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Morrison? Morrison's smile widened. Well, Mrs. Mitchell is a very attractive woman. I'm sure we could work out some arrangement that would benefit both of us. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. Stop talking. Nathan's voice was cold enough to freeze blood. Right now. Morrison blinked, apparently not used to being interrupted. Excuse me? You just propositioned my employee for sexual favors in exchange for housing. That's called sexual coercion, and it's illegal. It's also grounds for a lawsuit that would cost you everything you own. I was just suggesting. I recorded this entire conversation, Nathan said calmly, as did the security system in this room. Would you like me to play it back for you? The part where you suggested considerations was particularly damning. Morrison's face went pale, then flushed red. You can't. I can, and I did. Now here's what's going to happen. Nathan pulled out his phone and pulled up something Sarah couldn't see. I've had my lawyers review Mrs. Mitchell's lease. Every document was properly filed. Her income source was clearly stated and verified. You approved her application knowing exactly what her situation was. But more interestingly, I've had my team look into your building. Nathan turned his phone to show Morrison something that made the landlord's face go from red to white. Did you know you're in violation of 43 city housing codes? That your building has documented structural issues you've failed to address? That you've been collecting rent on 3 units that aren't legally habitable? Those reports are public record, Nathan finished, obtained through completely legal channels. I've already filed complaints with the City Housing Authority. I expect they'll be very interested in your business practices, but I'm prepared to make this simple for you. Morrison's hands were shaking now. What do you want? First, you're going to tear up any eviction notice you were planning to file. Second, you're going to provide Mrs. Mitchell with a written statement that her lease is in good standing and will remain so through its full term. Third, you're going to fix every code violation in your building within 60 days, or I will personally ensure the city condemns it. And if I refuse? Nathan's smile was terrifying in its calm. Then I'll buy your building at foreclosure prices when the city fines bankrupt you, which based on the number of violations, should take about 6 months. Then I'll evict you from the rental property you live in, which I noticed you also don't properly maintain. Then I'll ensure that every landlord association in Portland knows exactly what kind of operator you are. Do you understand? Morrison understood. He signed the letter Nathan's assistant produced from somewhere, his hand shaking so badly he could barely write. Then he left, walking quickly, his shoulders hunched. After the door closed, Sarah sank into a chair, her legs no longer willing to support her. You recorded him? This room is always recorded for legal purposes. It's disclosed in the sign on the door he walked past. Nathan sat beside her, his fury melting into concern. Sarah, how long has he been making suggestions like that? 5 years, Sarah whispered, since I moved in. But I never gave him an excuse. I was always on time, always followed every rule. I thought if I was perfect, he couldn't touch me. He had no intention of evicting you through legal means. He was manufacturing an excuse to extort you. Nathan's jaw was tight. I'm sorry I didn't know sooner. I didn't tell anyone. I was ashamed, like somehow it was my fault for being poor and alone. Sarah looked at Nathan, really looked at him. You didn't have to do that. You could have just helped me find a new apartment. He tried to hurt you, Nathan said simply. He tried to use your vulnerability against you. Nobody does that to my family. My family. The words settled around Sarah like a warm blanket. Besides, Nathan continued, I've been looking for a good real estate investment. A properly maintained apartment building in that neighborhood could be quite profitable. Sarah laughed despite herself. You're going to buy his building, aren't you? Already have my lawyers drafting the offer. He'll sell too. He can't afford not to. Nathan's expression softened. But Sarah, I want to talk to you about something else. More surprises? Different surprises. Good ones, I hope. Nathan pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. I've been thinking about your situation. The apartment is too small for 5 people. You're doing better financially, but one emergency could still derail everything. And the neighborhood, it's not unsafe, but it's not ideal for 4 growing children either. Sarah's defenses went up immediately. If you're about to suggest I move into some fancy apartment you're paying for, actually I was going to suggest something different. Nathan opened the folder. There's a house for sale 3 blocks from mine. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, fenced backyard. It needs some work, but it's structurally sound. The price is within reach of a mortgage you could actually afford on your salary. He showed her the listing, and Sarah's breath caught. It was a real house, not huge but spacious compared to their cramped apartment. The pictures showed hardwood floors that needed refinishing, walls that needed painting but good bones underneath. Nathan, I can't afford a house. You can with a reasonable down payment and mortgage. I've run the numbers with my financial advisor. Your salary, combined with standard first-time homebuyer programs, makes it feasible. I'm not offering to buy it for you, he added quickly, seeing Sarah's expression. I'm offering to loan you the down payment at 0 interest to be paid back over 10 years. You'd own the house. You'd make the mortgage payments. It would be yours. Sarah stared at the listing, her mind racing. A house. A real house with bedrooms for the kids, a backyard where they could play, a kitchen big enough to actually cook in. Why? She asked. Why are you doing all this? Nathan was quiet for a moment. Do you want the business answer or the real answer? The real one. Because watching you struggle when I can help is killing me, Nathan said quietly. Because those kids deserve stability and space and a childhood that isn't defined by poverty. Because you deserve to build something lasting instead of just surviving month to month, and because... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Because why? Nathan met her eyes. Because your family. Because I failed you and Marcus and those kids for 5 years and I'm trying to make up for lost time. And because somewhere in the last 6 weeks you stopped being my brother's widow and started being someone He stopped again. Someone you what? Sarah's heart was pounding. Someone I care about. Nathan finished. Not because of Marcus. Because of you. Because you're brilliant and strong and you make me laugh. Because coming to your apartment for dinner has become the best part of my day. Because when I imagine my future now, it includes you and those 4 kids, and I don't want to imagine it any other way. The words hung in the air between them, too big and too honest to take back. Nathan, Sarah breathed. I can't. You don't have to say anything, Nathan said quickly. I'm not asking for anything. The house offer stands regardless. I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest about why I'm doing this. Sarah's mind was spinning. Nathan Bennett, the man she'd spent 5 years resenting, had somehow become essential to her life. He'd become the person she thought about first thing in the morning, the one she wanted to share funny moments with, the one whose opinion mattered most. When had that happened? When had anger transformed into trust, and trust into something that felt dangerously like love? I need time, Sarah said finally. This is all happening so fast. 6 weeks ago I hadn't seen you in 5 years. Now you're offering me a house and telling me you care about me and I don't. I'm not ready for... I know, Nathan said gently. Take all the time you need. The house will still be there next week. I'll still be here. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. Whatever you decide, whatever pace you need, I'll match it. That night, Sarah lay in her cramped apartment, listening to the triplets breathe in their crib and Lily's soft snores from the other room. She thought about Morrison's predatory smile, about 5 years of fear and exhaustion, about the way Nathan had stepped between her and danger without hesitation. She thought about the house with its 4 bedrooms and backyard, about Lily having her own space finally, about the boys being able to run and play without disturbing neighbors through thin walls. But mostly, she thought about Nathan's words, "Someone I care about." Sarah pulled out her phone and typed a message. "Show me the house. But just as friends looking at real estate, I'm not ready for more than that." Nathan's response came immediately. "Friends, I can do friends. For as long as you need." Sarah smiled in the darkness, feeling something unfold in her chest that might have been hope, or might have been the beginning of something even more terrifying and wonderful. In the living room, Marcus's picture sat on the shelf, and Sarah could almost hear his voice. "About time you let yourself be happy again, Sarah. About damn time." The house was perfect, which terrified Sarah more than anything. She stood in the empty living room on a Saturday morning 3 weeks later, watching the December sun stream through windows that actually let in light, and tried to find reasons to say no. The floors were scuffed, the walls needed painting, the kitchen appliances were outdated, but the bones were solid, just like Nathan had said. And more importantly, it felt like home in a way their cramped apartment never had. Lily was already running through the rooms, claiming the one with the window seat as hers. The triplets toddled after her, their laughter echoing off bare walls. Nathan stood in the doorway, trying to look neutral but failing to hide the hope in his expression. "The backyard needs work," Sarah said, grasping at objections. "And the fence has gaps the boys could get through." "Easily fixed," Nathan replied. "I know a contractor, Marcus's old company actually. They'd do good work at a fair price." Of course he did. Of course he'd thought of everything. "It's a 30-year mortgage," Sarah tried again. "That's a massive commitment." "Shorter than the 25 years you've already committed to raising 4 children, Nathan pointed out. "And you'd be building equity instead of paying someone else's mortgage." Sarah wanted to argue more, to find the fatal flaw that would let her retreat back to the safety of their apartment. But Lily appeared in the doorway, her face glowing. "Mom, there's a tree in the backyard. Uncle Nathan says maybe we could build a tree house. A real one, not like the one Daddy made that fell down." "Your daddy's treehouse didn't fall down," Nathan corrected with a smile. "It just required some redesign. Engineering is an iterative process." "What's iterative mean?" "It means you keep trying until you get it right." Lily considered this. "So we could try until our treehouse is perfect?" "Exactly." Nathan's eyes found Sarah's over Lily's head. "You keep trying until you get it right." The metaphor wasn't subtle, but it landed anyway. Sarah felt something in her chest crack open a little wider. "I need to think about it," Sarah said, but they both knew she'd already decided. They signed the papers 2 weeks later, 4 days before Christmas. Sarah's hand shook as she signed her name to document after document, committing herself to debt and responsibility and hope all at once. Nathan sat beside her at the title company, not signing anything himself but present as. What? Support? Family? Something more? Sarah still hadn't answered his confession from 3 weeks ago. She'd successfully avoided being alone with him since then, always keeping the children as buffers, changing the subject when conversations got too personal. Nathan had respected her boundaries with patience that somehow made her feel worse about her own cowardice. The house was officially theirs 2 days before Christmas. Sarah stood in the empty living room again, this time with keys in her hand and terror in her heart. "We're homeowners," she said to the empty space. "We own a house. This is insane." "This is progress," Nathan corrected. He'd shown up with moving boxes and a truck, refusing to let Sarah hire movers when he had perfectly good connections. "This is you building a life instead of just surviving." The move happened fast. Their apartment didn't have much furniture, and what they had was mostly garbage picked or thrift store salvaged. Nathan's connections included an interior designer who'd been waiting with furniture catalogs and fabric swatches. But Sarah had put her foot down. "We'll furnish it slowly," she insisted, "as I can afford it. This is my house, Nathan. We do it my way." "At least let me get beds for the kids," Nathan argued. "And a couch. You can't sit on the floor." They compromised. Beds for everyone, a couch, a kitchen table. Everything else would wait. On Christmas Eve, they spent their first night in the new house. Sarah lay in her own bedroom with a door that closed and walls that didn't share sounds with neighbors, and listened to the unfamiliar creaks and settles of a house instead of an apartment. In the rooms down the hall, her children slept in actual beds instead of sharing the broken crib. Lily had her window seat and her own space. The boys had a room with enough floor space to play without tripping over each other. This was what stability felt like. This was what Nathan had been trying to give her all along. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "First night in the new house. How does it feel?" "Terrifying and wonderful." She typed back. "Thank you. For everything. Merry Christmas, Sarah. See you tomorrow." They'd made plans for Christmas dinner at Nathan's house. Sarah had tried to refuse, suggesting they stay home and do something simple, but Lily had begged with such enthusiasm that Sarah had caved. "Tomorrow," Sarah confirmed. "The kids are excited. Me too." Sarah set down her phone and looked around her empty bedroom. Tomorrow she'd hang pictures. Tomorrow she'd start making this house into a home. Tomorrow she'd maybe, possibly, finally address the conversation she'd been avoiding with Nathan for 3 weeks, but tonight, she let herself simply feel grateful. Christmas morning arrived with chaos and joy. The triplets woke at 5:30, and their excited babbling woke Lily, who woke Sarah. They gathered in the living room where Sarah had set up a small tree, bought at a discount lot on Christmas Eve, slightly crooked but theirs. The presents were modest. Books for Lily, who devoured stories like food. Simple toys for the boys. But the kids' faces glowed with happiness that had nothing to do with the gifts and everything to do with being together, being safe, being home. At noon, George arrived to drive them to Nathan's house. Sarah had been there once before, 6 weeks ago, for a Sunday dinner. It was a beautiful place. Modern and elegant, with that particular kind of perfection that came from professional decorators and no actual living. But today, Nathan's house had been transformed. A massive Christmas tree dominated the living room, decorated with lights and ornaments and a star on top that Lily had apparently helped choose. The dining room table was set for 6 with special booster seats for the triplets. "You did all this?" Sarah asked, taking in the decorations, the presents under the tree, the smell of cooking food from the kitchen. "I had help," Nathan admitted. "But I picked everything I wanted." He stopped, looking suddenly vulnerable. "I wanted the kids to have a real Christmas, the kind Marcus would have given them." Sarah's throat tightened. "Nathan, Uncle Nathan, Uncle Nathan." The triplets mobbed him, and the moment passed. Dinner was chaos in the best possible way. The triplets managed to get more food on themselves than in themselves. Lily told elaborate stories about school that probably weren't entirely true, and Nathan laughed more than Sarah had ever seen him laugh. This was what family looked like, Sarah realized. Not perfect, not always easy, but full of noise and mess and love. After dinner, Nathan produced presents. For Lily, a beautiful journal with a lock and key and a promise to take her to the bookstore every month to pick out new books. For each of the triplets, personalized wooden toys that Sarah recognized with a jolt. "You made these?" she asked, picking up a small wooden car with Mason's name carved into it. "I had help," Nathan admitted. "Marcus's old foreman, actually. He remembered your rocking horse request and suggested I learn some basics. These are rough, but—" "They're perfect," Sarah interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. "Nathan, this is—" "There's one more," Nathan said, suddenly nervous. He pulled out a large wrapped box and set it in front of Sarah. Inside was a photo album, leather-bound and elegant. Sarah opened it with trembling hands and found pictures, dozens of them, of Marcus. Marcus as a child, building things with serious concentration. Marcus as a teenager, laughing with Nathan. Marcus as a young man, strong and handsome and full of life. "I thought the kids should know him," Nathan said quietly. "Know what he was like, what he loved, what made him laugh. I've been going through old family albums, scanning pictures, collecting stories. This is just the first volume. I have years' worth." Sarah couldn't speak. She turned pages, seeing her husband in ways she'd never seen him. Before her, before loss, when he was just a boy becoming a man. "There's a letter, too," Nathan added. "In the back." I wrote down every story I could remember about Marcus. The stupid things he did, the brilliant things, the way he always knew how to make people feel better. I wanted Lily to have those stories. I wanted all the kids to know their father. Sarah found the letter, pages and pages of Nathan's neat handwriting, and something inside her broke open completely. This wasn't about money or houses or solving problems. This was about love, messy, complicated, real love. Love for Marcus's memory. Love for the children Marcus had left behind, and maybe possibly love for her. "Kids, why don't you go play with your new toys in the living room?" Sarah managed, her voice shaking. "Uncle Nathan and I need to talk." Lily herded her brothers away with the instinctive understanding of a child who knew when adults needed space. Sarah waited until they were alone, then looked at Nathan. "You love them," she said. "Really love them. This isn't guilt or obligation or trying to honor Marcus's memory. You actually love my children. Our children," Nathan corrected softly. "They're my family too, and yes, I love them. How could I not? I love them." "How?" Mason's fearlessness, Tyler's gentle heart, Oliver's thoughtfulness, Lily's brilliant mind. They're incredible kids, Sarah. You raised them alone, under impossible circumstances, and they're kind and smart and full of joy. That's all you. But you've made them happier, Sarah admitted. In 3 months, you've given them stability and security and a male figure who shows up consistently. You've been more of a father than... She stopped. Then what? Than I thought anyone would ever be for them again, Sarah whispered. After Marcus died, I thought that was it, that we'd always be incomplete. But you've filled spaces I didn't even know were empty. Nathan moved closer, hope and fear warring on his face. Sarah, 3 weeks ago I told you I cared about you. You've been avoiding that conversation ever since. But I need to know, is there any chance that you might feel the same way? Because I'm in love with you. Not because you're Marcus's widow, not because of the kids. Because you're strong and stubborn and you make terrible coffee but perfect pancakes. Because your laugh makes my day better. Because somewhere between Sunday dinners and homework help, you became the person I want to build a life with. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. I'm scared, she admitted. I haven't let myself feel anything for anyone in 5 years. I don't know how to do this. And what if it doesn't work? What if we try and fail and it hurts the kids? What if we try and succeed? Nathan countered. What if we build something real and lasting and give those kids the family they deserve? Sarah, I can't promise perfect, I can't promise easy, but I can promise I'll show up every day. I'll love those kids with everything I have, and I'll love you the same way, consistently, patiently, for as long as you'll let me. Sarah thought about Marcus's picture on the shelf in her new house. She thought about 5 years of grief and struggle. She thought about the way Nathan had shown up at a garbage dump in the rain because a little girl called him daddy by mistake. Marcus would approve, she said finally, of you, of this, of us giving the kids a complete family. He loved you. He'd want this. But what do you want? Nathan asked. Not what Marcus would want. Not what's best for the kids. What do you want, Sarah? Sarah looked at this man who'd appeared in her life like a miracle, who'd fought landlords and built rocking horses and learned to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs because Lily asked, who'd taken her broken family and helped piece it back together into something stronger than before. I want to try, Sarah said. I want to be brave enough to try. Nathan's smile was bright enough to rival the Christmas lights. He pulled her close, and Sarah let herself lean into his strength, feeling safe for the first time in 5 years. From the living room, Lily's voice called out, Are you guys done talking yet? Because the boys are trying to eat tinsel and I think we need adult supervision. They broke apart laughing, and Sarah thought about how this was what love looked like in reality. Not perfect romantic moments, but interrupted kisses and children eating tinsel and choosing to keep showing up anyway. In the living room, they found Mason with silver tinsel hanging from his mouth, Tyler trying to climb the Christmas tree, and Oliver systematically dismantling one of the wrapped presents. Lily stood in the middle of the chaos, looking overwhelmed. Nathan and Sarah waded in together, rescuing tinsel and children and presents. They worked in sync, anticipating each other's moves, creating order from chaos the way partners do. Later, after the kids had crashed from sugar and excitement, Sarah found Nathan on the back porch, looking out at the city lights. "Thank you," she said, sliding her hand into his. "For everything. For showing up. For staying. For loving us even when we made it hard." "You're worth it," Nathan said simply. "All of you. You're worth every difficult moment." "I love you," Sarah said, testing the words. They felt strange and new and terrifying and right. "I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between garbage dumps and Christmas trees I fell in love with you." Nathan kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. It wasn't Sarah's first kiss, but it felt like a beginning anyway, the start of something new built on the foundation of something lost. When they finally went inside, they found all 4 children asleep in the living room, piled together like puppies under the Christmas tree. Nathan and Sarah stood in the doorway, hands clasped, watching the gentle rise and fall of 4 small chests. "This is our family," Nathan said quietly. "Complicated and messy, and absolutely perfect." "Our family," Sarah agreed. "Built from loss, and found through a wrong number that turned out to be exactly right." In her pocket, Sarah's phone held the call log from that terrifying night in October, the call that had changed everything. A little girl's desperate cry for help, reaching across 5 years of separation to bring a family back together. Sarah thought about Marcus, about how he'd always said that family was worth fighting for. He'd fought for them by building blocks and carving their names into wood. Nathan had fought for them by showing up at a dump in the rain, and Sarah had fought by finally letting someone share the burden. 3 months ago, they'd been broken pieces. A widow drowning in poverty, a lonely millionaire in a glass tower, and 4 children growing up without knowing they had family beyond each other. Now they were something new. A family built not from perfection, but from choice, from showing up, from love that was learned and earned and absolutely real. "Merry Christmas, Sarah," Nathan whispered, pulling her close. "Merry Christmas," Sarah replied, and meant it with her whole heart. Outside, snow began to fall, covering Portland in white. Inside, a family slept peacefully, safe and warm and together. And somewhere, in whatever place waited beyond this life, Marcus Bennett smiled, knowing his family would be okay. More than okay. They'd be loved. And love, in the end, was all that really mattered.